play world, thinking about going into new world. But before that, I would like to see some videos about new world or other MMORPG game. Maybe is new world is the best one. So let's actually see this video and decide which MMORPG he is reminding. I mean, he is mentioning. I'm gonna watch some other videos as well. So let's actually watch this one and see whether this guy is right.
If I were to tell you that you had the opportunity here to win any MMORPG that you wanted, and you could do this completely free, because we're giving away several copies of any paid MMORPG that you want to all of you, because you guys have supported us all year and we would love to get back. Now, there are two different ways to participate. Number one, simply leave a comment on this video stating what MMO you would like. The Lost Ark pre-order, New World, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, Guild Wars 2's expansions, you name it. If you win, you can have it. Number two, simply navigate on over to our website at MMORPGS.tv. The link to that will be in the description in the pinned comment below. There are multiple ways of entering on the site, and you can gain new entries every single day by revisiting it, and that's it. Now, it is difficult finding an MMORPG to devote time to. Games either don't live up to the unrealistic hype that people create for them, or you happen across one that you genuinely like, that you are actually having fun in, and nobody else is. It's completely void of players, entirely empty. And with so many MMOs having come out this year, PSO2 Genesis, Swords of Legends Online, Bless Unleashed, Crowfall, Allion New World, have the top 10 most played MMOs shifted? Is there something better out there right now at the end of the year that everyone is devoting their time to? Let's take a few minutes here and find out together, especially given that next month is the beginning of 2022 and you are going to want something big to play, right? Let's start this off with the only anime MMORPG in this list, Maple Story. Maple Story released all the way back in 2003. This game has spawned a plethora of other titles under the same intellectual property, Maple Story M, which was received with moderate enthusiasm, and a sequel, Maple Story 2, that shut down a year after launching. Neither title truly managed to capture the quirky style that Maple Story employs. This is the only MMO in this list to utilize a horizontal graphical style. You move your character horizontally, left to right, across the screen. You can jump and you can climb, but the bulk of the game takes place on one level. You take quests, you venture out, you group up with other players, you fight for control of the area, and you grind. The game is a grind. An unbelievable grind, almost grindier than any other MMO that I have played in the last decade. Thankfully, it employs an incredibly fast, often chaotic action combat system to make up for the time that you spend engaged in combat. It's got an adorable anime-ish graphical style and gets updated repeatedly over the course of the year with new areas, new events, and new classes. This brings players coming back to the game and is what makes it one of Nexon's highest grossing, most profitable franchises, averaging hundreds of thousands of players across all regions per month. Yes, this list isn't including specifically English-speaking countries only. Star Wars: The Old Republic released all the way back in 2011 as part of the greater Star Wars franchise. Movies, TV series, video games, and while The Old Republic, the MMO, never truly lived up to the potential of the IP, it still eventually found its footing and allowed for Star Wars fans to channel their inner fan. Now, The Old Republic has had its highs and its lows, with its low points lasting significantly longer than its high points, granted, but that's partly due to how the game has been handled up until this point. This is an open world MMO with plenty of different regions and, as you'd expect, plenty of different highly diverse worlds to explore at your leisure. The Old Republic has one of the deepest, most compelling narratives of any MMO, and while that's 2 for 2 thus far, its combat is much less impressive. It utilizes a fairly basic tap-target combat system that definitely looks and feels older than a 2011 MMO should, given Rift, Ion, and Terra. Star Wars: The Old Republic just released their latest expansion, which has garnered quite a bit of attention and shot the game up to hundreds of thousands of players over the course of the last month. Now, how long this lasts, however, is another question altogether. The Elder Scrolls Online released in 2014, a mere 7 years ago. It feels like it has been out longer though, right? That's not just me. Much like Star Wars The Old Republic, The Elder Scrolls Online is set within an already existing franchise, The Elder Scrolls. You know, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim. Yes, I listed the 3 best in order of best to most overrated. And lower your pitchforks, guys. This is my personal opinion. ESO has been pretty steady for the last couple years. It's never really had any large peaks in terms of growth, but at the same time, it hasn't sunk very far beneath what it had already established itself as. The game has a fantastic narrative, a large open world to explore action combat, a fairly extensive class system allowing you to more or less equip what you want in terms of weapons and armor, while giving you the freedom to craft your class in terms of skills however you like. Graphically, the game holds up well. It's one of the better looking Western MMOs out there, with Guild Wars 2 being the only real competition. ESO averages a couple 100,000 unique players per month, and has been averaging roughly a similar amount all year. Guild Wars 2 was released back in 2012, and has since gone on to become one of the most played free MMOs, and more than that, it's generally considered to have the friendliest community of any MMO online. The main issue with Guild Wars 2 is that for the last several years, content has been released fairly slowly. This is due to NCSoft being incompetent and inhibiting ArenaNet from truly making Guild Wars 2 one of the greatest MMORPGs of this generation. And with slow releases comes an expected decline in terms of player population. Although with the recent announcement of its latest expansion into Dragons looming on the horizon, players have come back in droves to play catch-up, and new players are jumping in to see what all the hype is about. Guild Wars 2 is a gorgeous game with an incredibly large world. It has plenty of class customization, an active PvP community, and one of the better narratives out there. The game utilizes a very high-quality hybrid action combat system, allowing for players to change their entire playstyle by merely altering the weapon they have equipped. Now, this one's a little bit different. See, on the one hand, Star Citizen hasn't launched yet. It's an indie MMO that has been in development for years and has, over the course of its time spent in development, acquired hundreds of millions of dollars worth of funding. More funding than Final Fantasy XIV, more than World of Warcraft, and we're still years, perhaps decades, off from being capable of playing a fully realized game. However, that hasn't stopped players from playing it in the form that it's available in. This is a very incomplete game with very few fully implemented features. Yet, last year they reported that they had, at their peak, hundreds of thousands of active players, which is some of the most ridiculous numbers that I have seen ever for an unreleased title that is still so far off from being ready. RuneScape is the oldest title in this list, releasing all the way back in 2001. I'm not entirely certain how this game has retained the player base that it has, but I guess that is just a testament to how good the game must be, right? Now, I've never dedicated much time to the game. I'll be the first to admit that not every person is going to enjoy every MMO, right? It's asinine to believe that anyone would enjoy every single title in this list. RuneScape is an enormous game, with more content than you can realistically dream of partaking of if you're a new player. Sure, it is very dated, both in terms of how it looks and how it plays, but that's part of its appeal. Even though it's 2 decades old at this juncture, this game, these developers, they push out more updates than almost any of its competitors, paid or free. Thankfully, player numbers are public, so we can see that there are hundreds of thousands of active players at almost any point in the day, even if some people claim that half of them are bots. And yes, this is including both RuneScape and old school RuneScape in one. Black Desert Online released way back in 2014. Yeah, almost 8 years ago. 8 years. And in all that time, not a single MMORPG released has come close to competing with the game's dominance over the market in terms of graphics or combat. To date, BDO is considered to be the pinnacle of the MMORPG genre, that one game that every MMO has to live up to, and I can honestly understand why. Not only is this game absolutely stunning, the world itself, which is completely open, there are no loading screens at all, entirely explorable without limitations, whether on land or sea, but the depth of the character customization is unrivaled. Name one MMO with as good of a creator as BDO. You won't find one. Couple that with some of the best action combat, and you have what should be the best MMORPG available. Yet, due to its horrendous pay to win, its RNG, and its grind, it ultimately falls short. Pearl Abyss have confirmed hundreds of thousands of active players on the higher end of the spectrum, which sets it above almost every other MMO in this list. While New World is less than 2 months old at this point, it is definitely worth noting that even with all of its issues, all of the exploits, all of the hacks, the duplication of items, the gold, the lack of endgame, Amazon's poor handling of all of this, their choice to make the grind even longer in a recent update, there are still hundreds of thousands of people playing this. At the time of writing, there was still a peak of 132,000 players concurrently logged in, with likely over 1 million players still playing over the course of the last month minimum. New World features a large open world, albeit the world itself seems to lack much in diversity, both with regards to the environment and the monsters found within it. It utilizes an action combat system that honestly isn't bad, but I don't know, it felt too limiting to me when I played it. There's an extensive crafting system, a territory system, and so much more that is completely overshadowed by how often new exploits are revealed and taken advantage of, repeatedly ruining the experience for everyone playing. World of Warcraft, released back in 2004, and up until 2020, was the most populated MMORPG. It was completely unrivaled. Nothing came close to competing with it, especially after WoW Classic launched. Yet, like everything, eventually, things fall into obscurity. And while WoW is admittedly far from falling into obscurity, with the game still having over 1 million active players across both retail and WoW Classic, it's a far cry from what it once was. This is evident by the premature end of Shadowlands and their mad rush to push out something new to reignite the player base's passion to play through something new and potentially exciting. WoW is definitely a dated looking game for most of it anyway. Newer zones are absolutely gorgeous, and the game features what is arguably the best tab target combat within the genre, with the exception maybe being Ion or Arcage. It also features more lore than almost any other game that I have ever seen, MMO or non-MMO, but its story has just become so disconnected and such a convoluted mess that it's almost funny trying to keep track of what's going on. And finally, Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV released initially back in 2010 and was such a critical failure that they overhauled the game from the ground up, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. This was the largest failure and subsequently the largest undertaking in the entire MMO genre, and has since paid off given that it is now the most played, most popular MMORPG, and with Endwalker having just launched into early access, and both Mrs. Stakes and I playing through it, this is probably going to be the largest year for the game to date. Final Fantasy XIV already confirmed that they had hit their highest concurrent player numbers before the mass exodus of WoW players, and the combination of those additions to the game with fans are going to make queue times almost unbearable. Final Fantasy XIV features a large open world, with each expansion introducing even larger areas than the last. It's a gorgeous game with an incredible narrative. Shadowbringers was by far the best storytelling that I have ever seen in an MMO, and I have played through almost all of them. Its combat isn't the best, sure, but it's good enough that it doesn't bring the game down, it doesn't hinder or inhibit it. The amalgamation of everything that Final Fantasy XIV does right has shown continued success, with the game once being rivaled by Guild Wars 2 and now tripling, maybe quadrupling it in terms of active player numbers. Nobody ever thought that Final Fantasy XIV would dethrone WoW. They thought, you know, sure, WoW would do that to itself and Final Fantasy XIV would continue down the route that it was going. Boy, were we wrong. And that is everything. They are the 10 most played, most populated MMORPGs in 2021 in December, specifically moving into 2022. Were they what you expected?
Someday soon, I'm gonna make it.
Okay, so by looking at this video, I'm pretty sure it's clear that Final Fantasy 14 is the best one so far, and the second one is he put the order backward. Like the first one is actually Final Fantasy 14. That has the most active players, and then second one is World of Warcraft, and then the third one, I think, New World is booming, and the other things. So I currently play World of Warcraft, and I would say it's always one of the best game. And Final Fantasy is interesting. Like I tried to play using PlayStation 5, and I wasn't very attracted to it. But I am going to play using a PC. I think it will be good in PC. So I'm gonna start playing that from March. I had a plan of playing New World, but I didn't realize Final Fantasy 14 is much bigger and larger than that. So why not go for the best? So I'm gonna choose Final Fantasy 14 to play. Like currently I'm playing World of Warcraft. I'm gonna choose the next game to be Final Fantasy 14, and then after 100 days I will think about the another game. So what do you guys think about these games? Which one do you think best? Just put it in the comment section so everybody can read it. Thank you for watching. Let's actually see the comments. What people are saying about this. Thank you for everything you have done to the community since 2 weeks ago. I've been playing for free version of Guild Swatter and would very much love to be play expansions. You guys rock. I have been watching your coverage to stay spot on everything my personality and gaming goals hit. At this point, I have got just about every MMO process I enjoy, but if I want GW2 next expansion would finish off my list. Okay, so people are just. I would like to love the expansion I purchased pre-expansion. Okay, so these are the people's opinion about this. So in my opinion, Final Fantasy 14 is the best one so far. Second one is World of Warcraft, and New World is improving, so it has a lot more improvement to go. That's it guys, thanks for watching.